On Sunday Night Football, the 49ers beat the Packers 37-8. And, man, they completely shut down the Packers offense. Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers was held to 104 yards passing. He had 1 touchdown, also had a fumble, and he was sacked 5 times. He had pressure in his face constantly. And the 49ers defense did a good job getting the Packers into 3rd and long situations. 3rd and 24, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 13, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 7, just long 3rd and 10, long 3rd down situations. And then in those moments, they brought the heat. They said, we're going to bring a 5-man rush. You have 5 offensive linemen. We have 5 guys rushing those 5 guys. It's one-on-one matchups. We're going to win those one-on-one matchups. Aaron Rodgers will be in the turf. And they did that over and over and over again. On 3rd downs, the pressure the 49ers were able to generate was incredible. And, man, I just cannot help but be so impressed with the way that the 49ers have built their football team. I want to remind you guys, a little history lesson, if you will. In 2015, the 49ers' first-round draft pick was Eric Armstead, a defensive end, I believe out of Oregon. I think he went to Oregon. I believe so. But in 2015, they picked the defensive end, Eric Armstead. And then the next year in 2016, with their first-round pick again. So 2015, first-round pick, defensive end. 2016, another first-round pick, another defensive end. They picked DeForest Buckner. Then in January 2017, they hire a new general manager, John Lynch. And his very first move as general manager, he hires in Kyle Shanahan. We're going to bring in Kyle Shanahan, an offensive genius. Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons. They'd just gone to the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan elevated Matt Ryan, the Falcons quarterback. So far, he won the NFL MVP. They said, okay, we got a guy who understands offense really well. We have a head coach. Now we're going to build a defensive line. So after 2 years in a row, 2015, 2016, both times they drafted a defensive end with their first-round pick. In 2017, the 2017 NFL draft, what do? They draft another defensive end with their first-round pick. With the first-round pick again in 2017, they drafted defensive end Solomon Thomas. Now, I've wondered to myself, is Solomon Thomas a bust? Solomon Thomas is in year 3 of his career. He's played 2.5 seasons, and he's only got 6 sacks in his career. And I look at that and go, okay, Solomon Thomas is not producing very much. There's a couple things you can say. Well, number one, he's sharing the load. They got a bunch of great defensive ends with the 49ers. Maybe he's not getting enough reps. He's playing as kind of a reserve role. The other thing you got to remember is that here's a huge thing, right? After Solomon Thomas's first year in the NFL, his sister committed suicide. And my brother committed suicide in 2016. Let me tell you, when that happens, your entire life gets derailed. Everything you're doing, just you fall apart. And so the fact that Solomon Thomas actually literally still in the NFL is so impressive to me. I've dropped out of college. I fell off the wagon. My entire life fell apart when my brother died. I can't imagine losing your sister. And the fact that Solomon Thomas deserves a lot of respect, and you should be very, very careful, I think, when you call Solomon Thomas a bust. It's a guy who, to me, it's incredibly still playing in the NFL, literally. It's like this guy kept it together well enough to keep his career going when that all was going on. You got to tip the hat. Call Solomon Thomas a bust if you want. To me, it's a guy who was completely derailed. The fact that he's in the NFL is impressive. And I think there's still a chance he's got more career left. He could still get his act together and play even better in the future. So I would be a little bit easier on Solomon Thomas if you want to call him a bust. But again, 3 years in a row, 2015, 16, 17, the first-round pick was a defensive end. Now, in 2018, their first-round pick was Mike McGlinchey, an offensive tackle. Okay, interesting. They're building their team up front. Then in 2019, what do you think they did with their first-round pick? That's right. They drafted a defensive end, Nick Bosa, out of Ohio State. And then, oh yeah, by the way, who did they trade for? They traded a second-round pick for former first-round pick, Dee Ford, a defensive end from the Kansas City Chiefs. They immediately gave Dee Ford a new contract, and what did that do? That meant the 49ers had 5 defensive ends that were former first-round picks on their roster since 2015. That's incredible, right? Like Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas, Nick Bosa, Dee Ford, 5 defensive ends all drafted in the first round on the 49ers roster. That is incredible. They got their coach, they built the defensive line, then they got a quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. since 2015. I know I've beat this to death. Why are we beating horses? I know I say, there's a thing, like a saying where you go, I'm beating a dead horse. Well, I don't know why we're beating dead horses. It's just a phrase people use. But since 2015, the 49ers have almost exclusively drafted defensive ends in the first round. And it's paying off. They're 10-1, and they have an incredibly dominant defense. And a defensive line that good works kind of like a mask. If you have average corners, it doesn't matter because the quarterback is on the ground. A quarterback has a hard time throwing passes when he's on his back, when he's got constant pressure in his face. I really like Emmanuel Mosley, Ahkello Witherspoon, Richard Sherman's not bad. They're solid corners. They're not elite, but they're made to look like they're incredible because they have a ton of help with their defensive line. Aaron Rodgers was under constant pressure last night, throwing bad passes, inaccurate passes, didn't look like himself. Why is that? Because he's constantly got pressure in his face all the time. A great defensive line can hide a lot of issues and all kinds of problems on your defense and can make average players look like superstars in the back end and your secondary. A great defensive line is huge. Now, my question, all of this is leading to this. I wonder if other NFL teams are going to begin to copy the 49ers strategy. Do you remember how the New York Giants beat the Patriots in 2 Super Bowls? Both times they had a great defensive line. In 2008, they had Michael Strahan, a Hall of Fame defensive end. They had Mathias Kiwanuka, a first-round pass rusher, and they had Justin Tuck. 3 great defensive line pass rushers. Oh, guess what? In 2011, another Super Bowl they won. They had Justin Tuck, remember, great pass rusher. Jason Pierre-Paul, first-round draft pick pass rusher. Mathias Kiwanuka, another first-round draft pick pass rusher. Pass rush, pass rush, pass rush. Have a great defensive line, and it hides a lot of issues on your team and makes it really hard for quarterbacks to succeed. If you can get pressure on a quarterback and not have to do a bunch of crazy stuff on defense, if you can just say, hey, our guys are better than your guys, we're going to win one-on-one matchups and get pressure, that is how you win in the NFL, and that's how you win Super Bowls. That has made a huge impact. It's how the Giants did it. It's how the 49ers are doing it this year. My question is this. I look around the NFL. Look at the Bills. They have a franchise quarterback. The Jets have a franchise quarterback. The Browns have a quarterback. The Giants have Daniel Jones, a franchise quarterback. And they're going to all have higher first-round picks this year. What do they do with those first-round picks? In fact, let's look at the Broncos. If Drew Lock is their guy in Denver, they just drafted Bradley Chubb last year, 2 years ago now. What do the Broncos do? What do these teams do, the teams that have quarterbacks? Do they draft defensive linemen? Do they draft a defensive end? And then do they do it again and again and again? Are other teams going to copy the 49ers and begin building their defensive lines the same way the 49ers did, saying, hey, we're just going to get a bunch of depth and a bunch of talent. If our guy's tired, send in another first-round draft pick to go sack the quarterback. That is incredible to me, and that is what the 49ers are doing and have done. Is it possible? Will other teams begin to copy that? The NFL draft has two really talented wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. There's a bunch of skill players in that 2020 NFL draft coming up. Now, for years, the 49ers passed on sexy draft picks. They didn't go get receivers or running backs or this or that and they didn't worry about the flair. The San Francisco 49ers for years drafted very, very boring. They drafted defensive linemen, defensive ends in the first round. And those boring draft picks where you don't go, oh, that's not an exciting receiver. That's not this, that's not that. It's paying off now when they have one of the best records in football and potentially could win the Super Bowl this year. What will other teams do in the NFL draft? Will they draft Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb? Or will they draft defensive linemen and build their team the way the 49ers have done? That is my question. That's what I can't wait to see this year in the NFL draft. What teams make the boring pick? Draft offensive linemen. Draft defensive linemen. Look at the Colts. The Colts are a great team this year. What did they do? They built their offensive line. Well, the 49ers, what do? They built their defensive line. I think defensive line is actually more impressive right now. I'd rather have a great defensive line than a great offensive line. Really, you need both, though. But, man, drafting defensive line, that's the strategy the 49ers have used. It's paid off, and I wonder if other teams will begin to copy that. My name is Zach Schaumler. This is my podcast, Strong Opinion Sports. It's my favorite thing in the entire world. And I want to be very clear, open, and transparent. My YouTube channel is monetized. What that means is that some of my videos make money through ad revenue. Now, it's fewer than you think. A lot of my videos get claimed. But in the past, I've received donations from Patreon and PayPal. PayPal.me patreon.com/Zach Schaumler, patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. And so because I'm making ad revenue, it feels weird to just get donations. I wanted to give something back. I want to give people a reward for supporting me on Patreon. So now you can submit questions. If you give me $1 a month, you can submit questions to a pool of questions on Patreon. I look at all the questions on Patreon. I use my eyeballs. I make a joke about it. And I pick the top couple questions at the end of every single episode, and I read them and answer them on a segment called Ask Zach. Now, that's for people who have money. They want to support me. If you have no money to give, I totally understand. I've been a broke college kid myself. But if you believe in me and if you believe in my dream and you still want to help me, please help me grow by telling your friends about the show. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, maybe a screenshot it, you put it on your Instagram story. Help me grow by telling your friends about the show. My name is Zach Schaumler. Thank you so very much, and have a great day.